Chapter 1. The chipped ceramic mug warmed Sarah's hands, a small comfort against the gnawing anxiety in her stomach. Outside, the pre-dawn sky was a bruised purple, a reflection of her mood. Leo, her 5-year-old son, was still asleep, his breathing a soft rhythm that usually soothed her, but today it only amplified the pressure. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and her current waitressing job barely covered groceries. This one interview, felt like her last hope. The position was for an administrative assistant at Sterling Corp., a company known for its innovative tech, and more importantly, its robust benefits package. Sarah had spent weeks tailoring her resume, practicing interview questions in the mirror until her reflection looked as tired as she felt, and borrowing a sensible blazer from her sister. She'd even managed to get Leo's favorite dinosaur shirt ironed. A small victory in a week of small defeats. The Sterling Corp building loomed, a monolith of glass and steel that seemed to mock her worn-out heels. Inside, the lobby was hushed, filled with the scent of expensive coffee and hushed important conversations. Sarah clutched her worn leather portfolio, her heart thudding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She signed in at the reception desk, her hand trembling slightly. "Sarah Miller," she announced, her voice a little breathier than she intended. The receptionist, a perfectly coiffed woman with eyes that seemed to scan Sarah from head to toe, barely looked up. "The CEO's assistant will be with you shortly." CEO's assistant? Sarah's brow furrowed. She'd applied for an administrative assistant role, not an executive one. Had there been a mistake? A few minutes later, a crisp, efficient woman named Ms. Albright appeared. She led Sarah through a maze of polished corridors to a large corner office. The view was breathtaking, a panoramic sweep of the city that made Sarah feel both exhilarated and incredibly small. "Mr. Sterling will see you now," Ms. Albright said, gesturing towards a large mahogany desk. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped forward. Behind the desk sat a man, his back to her, silhouetted against the vast expanse of glass. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and exuded an aura of quiet authority. As he turned, Sarah's breath hitched. He was younger than she expected, with sharp, intelligent eyes, a strong jaw, and a smile that was both charming and disarmingly direct. This was Julian Sterling, the man whose name was synonymous with cutting-edge technology and immense wealth. He was also, Sarah realized with a jolt, devastatingly attractive. The interview began, and Sarah poured all her energy, all her hope, into proving herself. She answered every question with honesty and a quiet determination. She spoke of her organizational skills, her problem-solving abilities, and her unwavering commitment to her work. She even, hesitantly, touched on her responsibilities as a single mother, framing it as a testament to her resilience and time management prowess. Julian Sterling listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. When she finished, a beat of silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken possibilities. Then, he leaned back in his chair, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Chapter 2. The words, when they came, felt like a physical blow. "Thank you for your time, Miss Miller. We received a significant number of applications, and while your qualifications are certainly interesting, we've decided to go in a different direction." Julian Sterling's voice was smooth, polite, and utterly final. Sarah's carefully constructed composure began to crumble. Interesting? Was that a polite way of saying not good enough? Her meticulously prepared answers, her confident demeanor, all of it had amounted to nothing. She managed a weak "I understand," her voice barely a whisper. She felt a hot prickling behind her eyes, the telltale sign of unshed tears. She refused to cry here, in this opulent office, in front of this impossibly successful man. "We'll be in touch if anything changes," Julian added, his gaze already drifting towards his computer screen, a clear indication that the interview was, for him, definitively over. Ms. Albright reappeared as if summoned, her expression unreadable. "Miller." Sarah followed, her legs feeling heavy, her mind a chaotic jumble of disappointment and self-recrimination. She'd pinned so much on this. She'd envisioned Leo finally having the stability he deserved, escaping the cramped apartment, the constant worry. Now, that dream felt impossibly distant. Back on the street, the bustling city seemed to mock her with its indifference. The sun, which had seemed so promising just hours ago, now felt harsh and unforgiving. Sarah found a quiet bench in a small park and finally let the tears fall, silent and hot. She was a failure, a single mom struggling to make ends meet, unable to even land an entry-level job. The weight of it all threatened to crush her. As she sat there, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, her phone buzzed. A notification from her sister, a photo of Leo, beaming, holding up a drawing of a rocket ship. A fierce wave of love washed over her, momentarily eclipsing the despair. She couldn't give up, not for Leo. She took a deep, shaky breath and stood up. The job rejection stung, but it wouldn't break her. She still had her wits, her resilience, and a fierce determination to provide for her son. She still had bills to pay, and the waitressing job, however grueling, was still an option. As she walked away from Sterling Corp., her gaze fell on a small independent bookstore tucked away on a side street. She'd always loved books, the escape they offered, the worlds they opened. Maybe, just maybe, she could lose herself in one for a little while, recharge her spirit, and figure out her next move. She spent an hour browsing, the quiet atmosphere and the scent of old paper a balm to her frayed nerves. She found a dog-eared copy of her favorite childhood novel and bought it with the last few dollars in her wallet, a small indulgence. Later that evening, back in her tiny apartment, Leo's laughter filled the air as he pretended to be an astronaut, his rocket ship drawing clutched in his hand. Sarah watched him, her heart aching with love. "Mommy," he chirped, "when can we go to space?" Sarah smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Soon, my little astronaut. Very soon." She knew the path ahead was uncertain, but looking at Leo, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would find a way. She always did. Chapter 3. The following weeks were a blur of early mornings, late nights, and the constant low hum of anxiety. Sarah juggled her waitressing shifts with Leo's daycare schedule, her mind perpetually calculating finances and planning meals. Every rejection email, every unanswered application chipped away at her optimism, but the image of Leo's hopeful face was a constant reminder of what she was fighting for. One particularly grueling Tuesday, after a double shift that left her feet aching and her spirit depleted, Sarah found a crumpled flyer on her apartment door. It advertised a local community event, a networking mixer and charity fundraiser for a children's hospital. Sarah hesitated. Networking events usually felt intimidating, filled with people who seemed to have their lives perfectly in order. But the cause resonated with her, and the flyer mentioned that many local business leaders would be in attendance. It was a long shot, but what did she have to lose? The event was held in a bright, airy community center. The atmosphere was more relaxed than the sterile formality of Sterling Corp. Sarah, dressed in her best borrowed dress, felt a flicker of her old self return as she mingled, sipping on a plastic cup of cheap wine. She spoke with a few small business owners, exchanging pleasantries and brief elevator pitches. It was exhausting, and she felt the familiar sting of inadequacy when she compared her own precarious situation to their apparent stability. Just as she was considering making an early exit, a familiar voice cut through the chatter. "Ms. Miller?" What a surprise. Sarah turned, her heart leaping into her throat. Julian Sterling stood a few feet away, looking impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, a polite smile on his face. He was here, at this small community fundraiser? "Mr. Sterling," she managed, trying to keep her voice even. "Yes, it's a surprise." He gestured towards her plastic cup. "Enjoying the evening?" "It's fine," she replied, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "I'm here for the hospital fundraiser. My son is very passionate about helping other children." It was a slight embellishment, but it felt true enough. Julian's smile widened slightly. "That's commendable. I'm a patron of the hospital myself." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "I was surprised not to see you at Sterling Corp. We received a rather interesting application from you." Sarah felt a flush creep up her neck. "Yes, well, I understood you went in a different direction." "Indeed." He took a sip of his drink. "But I've been thinking about your application. You mentioned resilience and time management as key skills, linked to your responsibilities as a single mother." It's not a common perspective, but it resonated. Sarah's breath hitched, and he thought it resonated? I believe in giving people a chance, Miss Miller, Julian continued, his voice low, especially those who demonstrate ingenuity and a strong work ethic, regardless of their background. My executive assistant recently resigned unexpectedly. It's a demanding role, requiring someone who can handle multiple tasks, anticipate needs, and remain calm under pressure. Qualities I believe you possess. Sarah stared at him, her mind reeling. Was he offering her the job? The executive assistant role? The one she hadn't even applied for? The one she'd assumed was far beyond her reach? I'm not sure I'm qualified, Mr. Sterling, she stammered, her voice thick with disbelief. That's a very important position. Qualifications can be learned, Miss Miller, Julian said, his eyes holding hers. Resilience, dedication, and a sharp mind are inherent. I'm willing to take a chance. The salary is significantly higher, and the benefits package is comprehensive. It would provide the stability you're looking for. He paused, a hint of amusement in his tone. And it's a chance to prove that my decision not to hire you for the administrative role was, perhaps, premature. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. This was the lifeline she'd been praying for. I accept, she managed, her voice trembling with a mixture of shock and elation. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. Thank you so much. Julian Sterling offered her a genuine smile this time. A smile that reached his eyes and made him look surprisingly vulnerable. Julian. Please call me Julian, and welcome to Sterling Corp, Sarah. The first few weeks at Sterling Corp were a whirlwind of information overload and steep learning curves. Sarah's new office was a modest but well-appointed space just outside Julian's expansive domain. Her predecessor, a stern woman named Brenda, had left behind a meticulously organized system, but Sarah felt like she was deciphering a foreign language. There were spreadsheets, complex client lists, travel itineraries that read like a military operation, and a constant stream of emails and phone calls demanding immediate attention. Julian, true to his word, was an exacting but fair boss. He had a formidable intellect and an almost uncanny ability to predict problems before they arose. He'd push Sarah, challenge her, and expect nothing less than her best. But he also recognized her dedication. When she stayed late, poring over documents, he would occasionally drop by her office, not to micromanage, but to offer a brief, encouraging word or a precisely worded suggestion. You're picking this up quickly, Sarah, he'd said one evening, leaning against her doorframe as she meticulously organized his travel schedule. Brenda was good, but you have a different kind of adaptability. It's refreshing. Sarah would blush, a nervous flutter in her stomach. She found herself looking forward to those brief interactions, to the glimpses of the man behind the powerful CEO. He was incredibly focused, often working late into the night, fueled by coffee and an insatiable drive. Yet in the rare moments they spoke casually, she saw a flash of dry wit, a hint of vulnerability, and a surprising kindness. One day, Julian called her into his office. Sarah's heart pounded. Was she not cut out for this after all? He was standing by the window, his back to her, gazing out at the city. Sarah, he said, his voice thoughtful, I'm attending a charity gala next Saturday. It's a significant event for Sterling Corp, and my usual +1 had to cancel. I was wondering if you would consider accompanying me. Sarah blinked, momentarily stunned. Accompany him? To a formal gala? Me? But I'm not sure I'd be appropriate, Julian. I don't have anything to wear, and I'm not really a gala person. Julian turned, a slight smile playing on his lips. You're more than appropriate, Sarah. You're the most competent person I've worked with in years. And as for attire, Sterling Corp has a discretionary fund for such occasions. We can arrange something. Consider it an investment in your professional development. He paused, his gaze holding hers. And if I'm being honest, I'd appreciate the company. It can be a rather performative affair, and having someone genuine by my side would be a relief. Sarah's mind raced. This was an opportunity, a chance to step outside her comfort zone, to see a different side of the city and the man who now held her professional future in his hands. And there was something in his eyes, a flicker of genuine invitation, that made her feel less like she was being obligated and more like she was being truly asked. "Okay, Julian," she said, a hesitant smile touching her lips. "I'll go." His smile widened, and for the first time Sarah felt a definite spark of something more than professional interest pass between them. Chapter 5. The gala was a dazzling spectacle of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, reflecting the light off a sea of shimmering gowns and sharp tuxedos. Sarah, draped in a sleek, emerald-green dress that Sterling Corp had procured for her, felt like an imposter amidst the glittering crowd. The dress, though elegant, felt a world away from her usual practical attire. Julian, by her side, was a reassuring presence. He navigated the room with effortless grace, introducing her to influential figures and ensuring she felt included. He seemed to genuinely enjoy her company, his gaze often lingering on her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "You look stunning, Sarah," he murmured, his voice low, as they stood near a display of avant-garde sculptures. "The dress suits you." Sarah felt a blush creep up her neck. "Thank you, Julian. You look very distinguished yourself." He chuckled, a warm sound. Distinguished is one word for it. Tired is another. This is a lot of schmoozing. As the evening progressed, they found themselves in a quieter corner, away from the main throng. Julian seemed to relax, the polished CEO facade softening. He spoke about his passion for technology, his vision for Sterling Corp, and surprisingly, about the loneliness that often accompanied his success. "It's strange," he confessed, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "You build something significant, you achieve, well, whatever it is you set out to achieve, and then you find yourself surrounded by people who want something from you. True connection becomes rare." Sarah listened intently, a sense of empathy washing over her. She understood isolation, though hers stemmed from a different set of circumstances. "I can imagine," she said softly. "It's like you're on an island." Julian turned to her, his eyes serious. "An island of my own making, perhaps, but an island nonetheless. And you, Sarah, you don't seem to be on any island. You're very much present." His words struck her. She was present. Her life, though challenging, was grounded in the immediate reality of Leo, her work, her everyday struggles. She didn't have the luxury of detachment. Later that night, as they were leaving, Julian stopped her by the entrance, his hand gently cupping her arm. The air crackled with an unspoken tension. "Sarah," he said, his voice a little husky, "thank you for tonight. It was more than I expected." Before Sarah could respond, he leaned in and brushed his lips against hers. It was a brief, tentative kiss, but it sent a jolt through her. It was unexpected, intoxicating, and utterly disarming. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. I should get you home," he said, his voice a little strained. The drive back was filled with a comfortable, yet charged silence. Sarah's mind replayed the kiss, the feel of his lips, the unexpected intimacy. As he pulled up to her apartment building, Julian turned off the engine. "Sarah," he said, his gaze steady. "This is complicated, I know, but I find myself increasingly drawn to you, more than just a capable employee." Sarah's heart did a frantic dance. She felt it too, a connection, an undeniable pull towards this complex, driven man. "Julian," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I feel it too." He reached out, his thumb gently tracing her cheekbone. "We'll talk about this, soon." He paused, then leaned in for another kiss, this one deeper, more assured. It was a kiss that promised more, a kiss that blurred the lines between employer and employee, between professional courtesy and undeniable attraction. As he finally pulled away, Sarah was left breathless, her world irrevocably tilted on its axis. Chapter 6. The aftermath of the gala was a confusing, exhilarating blend of professional decorum and burgeoning personal connection. Sarah threw herself into her work with renewed vigor, her interactions with Julian now laced with an undercurrent of shared intimacy. There were stolen glances across his office, brief, meaningful touches as he handed her a document, and hushed conversations that stretched beyond professional necessity. Julian, for his part, seemed equally conflicted. He continued to rely on Sarah's efficiency and sharp mind, but his demeanor towards her had shifted. He was more open, more willing to share fragments of his personal life, and his smiles towards her held a warmth that was undeniably personal. One afternoon, Leo was down with a fever, and Sarah was struggling to find someone to pick him up from school. She was on the verge of tears, exhausted and overwhelmed, when Julian appeared at her office door. "Everything all right, Sarah?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Hesitantly, Sarah explained her predicament. Julian listened intently, his expression softening. Without a word, he stood up. "Don't worry about it," he said. "I'll go. What time does school let out? And where is it?" Sarah stared at him, dumbfounded. "Julian, you can't possibly. You have meetings, important work to do." "My work can wait," he stated, a firm resolve in his voice. "Your son needs you. And for today, that makes him my priority too." He went, picked up a confused but delighted Leo from school, and brought him back to Sarah's office. Leo, seeing Julian, his boss man, suddenly seemed to feel much better, his feverish cheeks flushing with excitement. Julian, surprisingly, seemed to relax in Leo's presence, engaging him in a conversation about dinosaurs and building elaborate towers with Leo's spare Lego bricks on Sarah's desk. "So, Leo," Julian had said, his voice gentle as he handed Leo a small, intricately designed Sterling Corp toy car. "Your mom is pretty amazing, isn't she?" Leo, clutching the car, nodded vigorously. "She's the bestest." Julian's eyes met Sarah's, a shared smile passing between them. In that moment, surrounded by the hum of the office, with Leo chattering happily about his new toy, the professional boundaries seemed to melt away completely. Later, after Leo had been safely delivered to his grandmother's care, Julian found Sarah alone in her office. The air was thick with unspoken emotions. "Thank you, Julian," Sarah said, her voice thick with gratitude. "That meant more than you know." "He's a great kid, Sarah," Julian said, his gaze soft. "And you're an incredible mother. It's one of the things I admire most about you." He stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently cup her cheek. "This is getting complicated, isn't it?" Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. "Yes, it is. And I don't want it to be complicated," he continued, his voice low and earnest. "I want it to be real." He leaned in, his eyes searching hers. "Sarah, I'm falling for you." The words hung in the air, breathtaking and terrifying. Sarah's own feelings, carefully suppressed beneath layers of professionalism and self-preservation, surged to the surface. "I'm falling for you too, Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling. He closed the distance between them, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was no longer tentative, but filled with a deep, undeniable passion. It was a kiss that sealed their unspoken feelings, a kiss that marked the beginning of something new, something unexpected, and something that felt profoundly right. Chapter 7. The tentative steps they had taken towards a relationship quickly deepened, surprising both Sarah and Julian with their intensity. The stolen moments in the office became more frequent. The hushed conversations morphed into genuine sharing, and the physical attraction ignited into a passionate connection. Julian, who had always kept his personal life fiercely guarded, found himself opening up to Sarah in ways he hadn't with anyone else. He spoke of the pressures of his upbringing, the relentless pursuit of success that had often left him feeling hollow, and his deep-seated desire for genuine connection. Sarah, in turn, found herself increasingly comfortable, sharing her own struggles and triumphs. She confided in Julian about the anxieties of single motherhood, the constant juggle of responsibilities, and her quiet dreams for a more stable future for herself and Leo. Julian listened with an attentiveness that made her feel truly seen and understood. He didn't offer platitudes, he offered genuine empathy and unwavering support. Leo, who had initially viewed Julian with a mixture of curiosity and mild suspicion, began to warm to him. Julian, with his playful demeanor and penchant for building elaborate Lego castles, quickly became Leo's favorite boss man. The sight of Julian patiently explaining complex coding concepts to a 5-year-old, or the shared laughter over spilled juice at Sarah's small kitchen table, was a profound joy for Sarah. It felt right, natural, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. However, the workplace presented its own unique challenges. While Sarah and Julian maintained a professional facade during business hours, the subtle glances, the shared smiles, and the undeniable chemistry were not lost on their colleagues. Whispers began to circulate, and Sarah felt a growing sense of unease. She was hyper-aware of her position, acutely conscious that any perceived favoritism could jeopardize her career and, more importantly, her credibility. One evening, as Julian was about to leave Sarah's apartment after a shared dinner, he stopped her at the door, his expression serious. "Sarah," he began, his voice low, "I know this is unorthodox, and I know people are talking, but I can't pretend that what we have isn't real. I'm falling more in love with you every day." Sarah's heart swelled. "And I'm falling in love with you too, Julian." He took her hands, his gaze steady. "But we can't continue like this indefinitely, not without addressing it. I don't want to put your career at risk, and I certainly don't want to compromise Sterling Corp. We need to make a decision." She knew what he was implying. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Were they going to make this official? Go public? "What kind of decision?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Julian's thumb gently stroked her hand. "I want to be able to introduce you as more than my executive assistant. I want to be able to claim you, Sarah, to build a future, a real future, together, with Leo." He paused, his gaze intense. "I want to marry you, Sarah." The words, spoken with such quiet sincerity, stunned Sarah into silence. Marriage? It was a beautiful, terrifying thought, a dream she hadn't dared to entertain. She looked at Julian, at the genuine love and hope in his eyes, and knew that her life, the life she had fought so hard to build, was about to change in ways she could have never imagined. Chapter 8. The proposal. The quiet sincerity of Julian's words left Sarah breathless. Marriage. It was a concept she had filed away under unlikely fantasies long ago, a luxury reserved for those with less complicated lives. But Julian, with his unwavering gaze and the hopeful tremor in his voice, had brought that fantasy crashing into reality. "Julian," she began, her voice catching. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming emotion. Are you sure? It's a huge step." Julian's thumb gently brushed away a tear from her cheek. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Sarah. You and Leo, you're my home, my future. I want to wake up every morning and see you both. I want to face every challenge, every joy with you by my side." He smiled, a warm, reassuring smile. "I know your life hasn't been easy, but I want to be the one to finally give you the security and the happiness you deserve." Sarah's heart ached with love and a touch of trepidation. Her life had been defined by resilience, by standing on her own 2 feet. The idea of leaning on someone, of sharing her burdens and her dreams so completely, was both exhilarating and daunting. But looking at Julian, at the man who had seen her, truly seen her, beyond her circumstances, she knew she couldn't say no. "Yes, Julian," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." His relief was palpable. He pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as if he'd never let go. The kiss that followed was full of promise, a celebration of their shared future. The days that followed were a whirlwind of joyful planning and hushed conversations with close friends and family. Sarah's sister, her staunchest supporter, wept with joy. Leo, informed that he was going to have a new daddy, was ecstatic, his imagination already conjuring up elaborate wedding scenarios. At Sterling Corp, Sarah and Julian decided to keep their engagement private for a while. The company was in the midst of a critical merger, and they didn't want any external distractions. Their professional relationship continued, but now with a palpable undercurrent of shared excitement and a deeper intimacy. Julian, no longer hiding his feelings, would often meet Sarah for lunch, their conversations filled with plans for their future together, interspersed with casual discussions about market trends and project deadlines. One afternoon, a reporter from a prominent business magazine requested an interview with Julian about the upcoming merger. Julian, with a mischievous glint in his eye, agreed, but with a condition: Sarah would be present. During the interview, the reporter, impressed by Sarah's sharp insights and calm demeanor, asked Julian how he managed such a demanding schedule and a complex negotiation. Julian, with a proud smile, gestured towards Sarah. "This woman," he said, his voice resonating with affection, "is my rock. She keeps me grounded, focused, and inspires me every single day. She's not just my executive assistant. She's my partner in every sense of the word." The reporter, sensing a story, pressed further. "So your partnership extends beyond the office?" Julian looked at Sarah, his eyes shining. "It does. We're engaged, we're building a life together." The news, once it broke, sent ripples through the business world. Some were surprised, others speculated, but the overwhelming sentiment was one of admiration for the unconventional pairing. Sarah, who had once felt invisible, now found herself the subject of positive attention, her resilience and intelligence recognized alongside Julian's success. As Sarah looked at Julian, surrounded by the glitz and glamour of his world, she knew she had found something extraordinary. She had walked into Sterling Corp a desperate single mother seeking a job, and she was leaving it as a woman deeply loved, about to embark on a life she had never dared to dream of, with a man who saw her for exactly who she was. Chapter 9. The wedding preparations were a delightful chaos, a blend of Julian's sophisticated tastes and Sarah's desire for a warm, family-centered celebration. They opted for an intimate ceremony at a secluded vineyard upstate, a place that offered both natural beauty and a sense of serene privacy. Sarah, finally able to relax into the joy of their impending union, found a newfound confidence blooming within her. The constant worry that had shadowed her for years began to recede, replaced by a quiet sense of peace and excitement. Leo was, understandably, the ring-bearer. He practiced his role with utmost seriousness, his tiny tuxedo making him look like a miniature version of Julian. The thought of him walking down the aisle, his face beaming with pride, filled Sarah's heart with an overwhelming love. She